Yasmin, in whom Mahadgunaha, exalted transcendental qualities, Rajan, O King, Gruhyante, are glorified, Kavibihi, by persons who are thoughtful and advanced in knowledge. Muhu, always. Na, not. Te, these. Adhuna, today. Pidhiyante, are obscured. Yatha, just as. Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvare, the Supreme Controller. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O King, Prahlad Maharaj's good qualities are still glorified by learned saints and Vaishnavas. As all good qualities are always found existing in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they also exist forever in his devotee. Prahlad Maharaj. Purport. From authoritative scripture it is learned that Prahlad Maharaj still lives in Vaikuntha Loka, as well as within this material world on the planet Sutala. This transcendental quality of existing simultaneously in different places is another qualification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Goloka eva nivasati akhilatma bhutaha. The Lord appears in the core of everyone's heart, yet he exists in his own planet, Goloka Vrindavan. A devotee acquires qualities almost the same as those of the Lord because of unalloyed devotional service. Ordinary living beings cannot be so qualified, but a devotee can be qualified like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not in full, but partially. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, simple point, one point, I shouldn't say simple, there's one point in this purport that just as the qualities, or all the good qualities exist in the Lord eternally, similarly, all these good qualities exist in his devotee Prahlad Maharaj also eternally. That means there is no circumstance, there is no situation, either in time or in space, that Prahlad Maharaj will become less humble or less tolerant or less in his loving service towards the Lord. These qualities will always be there under whatever circumstances he is put in or put into. And Prabhupada says, another quality of the Lord is that he can be simultaneously present in more than one place. The Lord is in Vaikuntha, Goloka eva nivasati akhila atma bhuta. So while he is living in Goloka Vrindavan, he is also simultaneously present in the heart of every living entity. He is in this building, he is in that country, this planet, that planet of the universe, all simultaneously existing. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj is there in Vaikuntha and also in the Sutala planet. So the perfection of a devotee, one who's realized the spiritual, or one who's a surrendered devotee of the Lord, can and does exist in more than one place simultaneously. If I were to say this and ask you for an example, or how you would explain this to someone after reading this, what would you say? You wouldn't. Somebody raised their hand, maybe they can. So this is the scenario. You're sitting on a train or bus, you're going with someone, you're reading this book, and someone says, "What you reading?" And you say, "Oh, it's a book called Srimad Bhagavatam." "Oh, what you reading? Can you tell me specifically what is that paragraph?" And you read to them. A devotee acquires almost the same as those of the Lord because of unalloyed devotional service. And they say, "What does that mean?" What would you say?
And I would just give them like a mundane example to help them understand. So
Mundane
just like,
example. Okay.
yeah, like the servant living in a mansion gets all the facilities of the mansion.
A servant living in a mansion
Like
is
a servant
also?
living in a mansion acquires the material qualities of the master of the mansion because he's in his association.
Right. The point is, can the servant exist in the mansion and also the summer home of the master simultaneously? That was the point.
Oh, true.
So, how do you explain that? What would you say?
So it's simple actually that in mundane technology we see just by a video camera a person can exist in millions of places all over the world. Like on, news broadcasters, they're sitting in one place, but they're present, or an aspect of their existence is present all over the world. So what to speak of spiritual technology and the unlimited potency of the Lord? This is just one little material technology is able to do such a wonderful thing.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Go ahead.
There's a reason that's not a fitting example.
Yeah.
Because
you cannot ask the person on TV a question.
Yeah, the reason this is given in the Bhagavatam, and it's in the canto, the chapter discussing Narada seeing Krishna expanded and all of his associates expanded everywhere.
Yes.
The reason
Especially
is
when they go to Shrutadeva and Bahulashva's house. That one?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't exactly recall the spot. The reason that it wasn't...
my favorite pastime. That's why I remember it.
The reason it wasn't exactly given, because the yogis can also expand their bodies up to like 9 or 10 times or something.
Kardama Muni did.
But the yogis, they can only do exactly the same action as the original, what do you say, like the prototype?
Right.
But in the case of Krishna and his associates, they can all be doing different activities in those different places. So that gives it its inconceivableness.
That is described when
Unlike the
Narada
yogi.
Muni visits Dwaraka, and he sees that in Dwaraka, Krishna, first of all, the most bewildering thing is that when he goes to Dwaraka, in each of these palaces, time and the activity are totally different. In one palace, Krishna is just waking up. In another palace, Krishna is performing his morning duties. In another palace, he is having lunch with his family. And they're all at the same time. Narada Muni simultaneously sees different activities, different scope of time. In another pastime, when Krishna visits, there is a king. He visits this king, Bahulashva. Bahulashva is a very, very amazing devotee of Krishna, and he has this very strong, ardent desire that he would like to see Krishna and offer him some service. And Krishna, who is far away in Dwaraka, wants to reciprocate with that desire, although he is also there in the heart. So Krishna arrives, and he comes not alone, but with the whole entourage of sages, Vyasadev, Asita, Devala, Narada Muni, Shukadev Goswami, the whole long list of people. And when he arrives to the kingdom, of course the king Bahulashva receives Krishna very nicely. In the same place, in that kingdom, there is another Brahman by the name Shrutadev, who also is a very amazing devotee of Krishna and has the strong desire to do some service for Krishna. So it's described that simultaneously Krishna and all the sages go to Bahulashva's house and to Shrutadeva's house. They're in both places at the same time. And in Bahulashva's house, Krishna is served in a very royal, opulent way, seated on a fantastic throne. All the sages are given very, very nice places to sit. And the offering, the bhoga that's given is just this whole range of food items. All excellent basmati rice with golden ghee, and there's a whole thing. And when he's in Shrutadeva's house, Krishna is given a straw mat to sit on. All the sages are also given simple straw mat because that's all the Brahmin has. And a very simple offering, rice and dal or something like that. And Krishna and both the sages, they are equally satisfied simultaneously. So, and there are many such pastimes where one can. A practical example for us that is important to know and appreciate is in all our temples is the deity of Prabhupada and the picture of one spiritual master. And one makes an offering. Simultaneously in so many houses the offering are being made. Prabhupada is also there, so many temples. And it's not that Prabhupada's presence is not there. It is there. Simultaneously, even within the material world, Prabhupada's presence is in all these temples. So for a person who doesn't know this, or sitting next to us, or whatever, the conviction with which we can, express depends on the conviction that we have developed and our own understanding of things. So it's necessary that we understand how that is possible. Okay? Yeah, Jai Jagannath. I was going to say.
Hare Krishna. There was a reason I said I wouldn't attempt to explain that particular aspect, because in the verse it says, Grihante kavi bhir mohu.
Correct.
That the kavis are the persons who are appreciating this transcendence of Prahlad Maharaj. And I think if I recall, I was reading this section a few days ago. I think the Kavi Bir was one, I think it was described specifically by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that the Kavi Bir is one whose mind has been already purified through various sadhanas and so on. So unless a person is Kavi, then to try to explain to them the inconceivable aspects of transcendence would just probably cause more confusion than it would anything notwithstanding a person's personal conviction and so on. Sure. That's why I was giving that sort of, maybe you want to expand on that.
Sure, and that is true. Yet Vyasadev, we may not understand fully, or let's say we won't realize it. Vyasadev wrote the Bhagavatam. I'm not arguing, I'm sharing the same thought. Vyasadev wrote the Bhagavatam in such a way that that which is beyond one's access, one can somehow move in the direction of understanding or accessing it. And among all the Kavis, other than Stephen Kavi, among all the real Kavis, Lord Brahma is Adi Kavi. And for Lord Brahma also to be able to understand this, he took up 1,000 celestial year long austerity. Because without such austerity, one cannot become, as I say, Amala. Like we've been hearing the 7th chapter of the 1st canto, Bhakti Yogena Manasi, Samyak Pranihite Amale. Until the Amala, or at least some proportion of Amala nature isn't developed, we cannot grasp. Therefore the word here is Grihyanti. Grihyanti is glorifying, but it means glorifying with realization, what is there in the heart. So the point is that our need for becoming amala is very, very high. Otherwise, the deeper subject matter will not settle in the heart. It may remain at best a theoretical knowledge, a theoretical idea, that when it comes to day-to-day life, we wouldn't know how that is applicable for us. Anyway, okay? Go ahead.
One concern I would like to just see what your thoughts are about is, in my experience, and also I've seen one issue that comes up if persons take this stance. Well, this subject matter is too sophisticated or maybe too intricate, so I'm not going to offer any explanation to you. A, because maybe you're not going to understand. B, because, well, you just have to accept it on faith. It's just a little bit strikes me as similar to what turned a lot of people off of Judeo-Christian traditions, that they just take this stance. I'm not going to explain anything to you. Don't ask questions into these topics, because it's not something that we're going to be able to understand or explain in any type of way. So how can we avoid, let's say, unintentionally kind of following in the footsteps of such religious, spiritual authorities?
Excuse me. I have heard that some people get insulted if they are told it's a subject matter that cannot be understood, because people do get offended by truth. While the statement is definitely true, the common person, because of pride, feels insulted that, what? Are you saying that I don't have the intelligence? Are you calling me stupid, that I will not understand something? Of course, we would like to say yes, but that's not the point, because we ourselves won't understand. Because I heard something which stuck with me or since 15 years, is that to understand anything material, logic is a very helpful tool. And to understand spiritual subject matters, logic falls short somewhere. What is necessary is purity of heart. So we definitely don't want to insult our audience, because ultimately, in the missionary spirit, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, cultivating our devotional life, and most definitely taking it out to the public, who's our audience. So if we tell our audience, you're stupid, they will take it as an insult. No, feel it. That's right. Sure. How I was taught or trained was, it's not what you say. It's not what you do also for someone. It is how you make them feel. This is all about that. You may even say and do things for them, but if they don't feel that you care for them, then their heart will not be touched. Now, what does feel mean, and how much of it is on the mental space? That is definitely the consideration. But for us also to be able to cut through the layers of resistance that a person may have, yes, of course, we need to have genuine care. Still, the truth is that this subject or these subject matters are not easily understood or not understandable either. So what is necessary is, what I've come to appreciate, is that whoever is speaking, if they themselves are not on the track of becoming pure, the audience doesn't have an asset through which the knowledge will enter. It's the speaker's purity, in one sense, that can cut through.
Just to check if the way I have understood it, and maybe you're saying the same thing. A person who presents, for example, presenting this verse and this purport, and he has faith that this is reality. So then he might give some explanation or some analogy that's not perfect. There's analogies that are imperfect. I mean, every analogy is imperfect. But it's on the strength of the person's faith in the principle being explained that actually will drive the point home. In other words, yeah, I guess purity. I'm just thinking purity and faith, is it synonymous, or would you draw a distinction between the two?
Yeah, but just an analogy is not in and of itself sufficient. As they say in math, necessary but not sufficient condition. So in math, when you're trying to prove something, there are some necessary conditions that particular equation must fulfill. But if it does, it's said that it's not sufficient enough. There are certain things that are necessary but not sufficient. So logic, for example, is a necessary tool. All our acharyas use. Bhagavatam also uses. But it's not sufficient in and of itself. Because one may understand the analogy, one may understand it, no problem. Because it's in spoken English, one can explain it, all of that. One can understand the analogy. But it's not sufficient for truth to settle. So analogy is necessary and it's used all the time. But it's described as a tool. Was that logic, analogy do not establish truth. They only help explain certain aspects of truth, but they don't establish truth, because that can change. Like you said, every analogy has its space and time dimensions by which it is limited. But they're useful. They're useful in delineating a certain aspect or section of the truth. We're probably saying similar things, but developing on it, building on it. Carlos, and then, okay. Jai Jagannath, and then Carlos. Jai Jagannath, and then Carlos. Or Carlos, and Jai Jagannath. However,
I would use a very pedestrian and prosaic analogy, saying, at this very moment in the whole planet, everybody is eating a banana. Banana has the same qualities everywhere, and is going to affect the people in the same way. Some probably get bananas or get diarrhea or something, depending on the body and depending on the condition of the person that is consuming that banana. But bananas has the same qualities everywhere. So if you eat a banana right now, it's causing the same effect that the one that is eating in Africa or in India or everywhere, without getting into further philosophical or doctrinary.
This is your analogy to explain what?
That the same way that I have the Lord inside me, simultaneously the Lord is inside every person that would like to have the Lord inside and feel it.
This is true. But the tricky part is not the Lord's presence anywhere and everywhere. That is,
Or the qualities.
in one sense, we can say it's a given and that's why he is God. The point is, the pure devotee also, he can be in many places simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
So the banana analogy is, yes, the truth is truth, but even in that, each banana is different. But is that how the same banana can be eaten by multiple places? That's it. Go ahead.
Even Srila Prabhupada used analogies, and he took from modern scenarios
Sure.
like the car and the driver of the car and so on to clarify certain subtle aspects. But when it gets very subtle, like we're hearing about how the devotee is able to expand his spiritual form in the same way the Supreme Lord is, then we can use modern analogies as long as they don't contradict anything that comes in our pramanam. So our pramanam is Vedic literature, Shastra, Acharyas. And so if we use a mundane analogy, using that language,
Right.
mundane, to describe it, that's totally cool, provided it doesn't contradict anything else we find in our pramanam. So therefore, I just brought up that particular point that actually it was from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, because there's a whole section dedicated to this, how the devotee expands his body. So I forget which chapter though. It's in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and it's there that the analogy of the yogi was used. And Sanatana Goswami says there that this is not a fitting example because of this reason. And so because our example might be contradicting something we find, then we would have to find a more suitable analogy to get it across.
Right.
And therefore, that's why I said these sorts of topics are a little bit challenging to explain because, first of all, what's the basis for which they understand truth? So if they don't appreciate pramanam, then we might have to take a different approach in trying to explain certain topics to them and so on like that.
Correct. So when it comes to topics such as these, although this paragraph is being talked about or this principle is being talked about, the audience may need a preliminary step forward. And so if we don't understand it, then there was, we will come out as either dogmatic or, oh, I've been chanting Hare Krishna, this is not for you. That's not our purpose. So it will come. Now I was thinking, as how analogies are necessary, simultaneously the amala nature, the heart also needs to be on the track of becoming purified. Is, when you hear Prabhupada's morning walk or certain things he can explain so like that, which otherwise wouldn't so easily be understood. Like there are many, many such ones. One thing that I appreciate is when we say Trisandhyam, right? Dhyayam stuvamstu yashas Trisandhyam. And the idea is that one should remember the spiritual master during the 3 transitions of the day. Actually, the 3 transitions of the day is when one remembers Krishna also, of course, we chant Gayatri. And Prabhupada explained that in life, there are always these 3 transitions, whether it's the day or life in general. And so he used the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 13 verse, Kaumaram, Yavanam, Jara. And he said there are the 3 phases, and one should remember Krishna in all 3 phases. It was how Prabhupada's, not only understanding, of course, but the way to explain that the 3. So that tells us that in life, transitions are very, very, I'm digressing a little bit, transitions are very critical. And each transition must be honored. This is what we call samskaras. Transition, garbhadana, births and jatakarma, vivaha, etc. They're all initiations, they're all transitions, and it's celebrated, honored, recognized, because they're potent. Anyway, side digress. But point is how he can explain. It comes from purity of heart. Another way of saying it is when there's a lot of clutter in the heart, to discern and simplify is not easy. Kali Yuga means make simple things complicated. Everything complicated. There is a competition among universities. I forget the name of this. That the challenge is to the students that the simplest of tasks, you should learn how to complicate it and should have 20 steps in it. For example, a simple step such as, I pick the book from the table, or I drop this in the garbage can. How many steps does it take? Literally 2 steps. I open the garbage can lid and I put it in. Simple. The challenge to the students is complicated. 20 steps at least. So they take a plate on which they keep this one. There's a tennis ball that falls. It pushes some other lever. Then it drops. She knows the name. Rube Goldberg. Rube, right? Rube Goldberg. He had this yeah. That's the process that you have made complicated. So then the tennis ball falls here. It hits a lever. The big soccer ball will roll. Something. At the end of it, the garbage can will open and a plate will. So Kali Yuga means make simple things complicated. And spiritual life means make complicated things simple. Or remove complication, first of all, but make things simple. Simplify. Simplify everything in life. And these are those places where, depending on how our heart is, one can explain. Uttama Shloka Prabhu had a point, and then. Can you turn it on, please? They will push it up, yeah.
The material also, like, when you see, if you see the TV, is channelized everywhere. Simultaneously, you can see everything at every same time. And also when you speak on the radio station, you can hear in every country, everywhere. And also the mystical power people they have, they can go simultaneously
Right.
at different places also. So in material world, something common exists that it can be at simultaneously at different places exists also. So this is like in a spiritual world, what to speak about it, And also, like as a common man also, he has a mind. Because of that mind, he can create that, I am in Vrindavan. He can be here and he can be present through the mind in Vrindavan simultaneously. He can be simultaneously present in India also. Maybe maybe in the New York also.
Yeah.
So that's ability of the mind also that can go simultaneously everywhere.
Yes, and in that one we are expert. The need is to be in the Bhagavatam class, then simultaneously be somewhere else. Yeah, but that's true, possible. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Can somebody teach me how to do this so I can be simultaneously have my home in here too?
Yeah, Luke will teach you.
Okay. It'll come to me eventually?
Yeah,
Okay.
Luke will teach you. Okay, Jitendra Prabhu.
With Prabhupada would say, with Krishna consciousness, difficult things become very simple, and then without Krishna consciousness, simple things become difficult. And then Prabhupada says that people are suffering from a poor fund of knowledge and insufficient brain substance. They don't like to hear that insufficient brain substance thing. You remember when he would say that women are less intelligent? Do you remember that in the Sri Ashopanit? No, it was in the
Bhagavad
Science of
Gita,
Self-Realization.
Chapter 1, text
Pardon me?
41. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, text
Okay.
41.
So, like modern society is filled with pretension and what was that other thing? Well, that too, you know. But
You know, the thing about the pride in the conditioned soul, which is actually what blocks mercy, is when someone is told or made to feel stupid. Not that that's what we want to do, but when they feel like that, they become angry. But the same person, if they take to a process of purification, the first realization will be, I don't know anything. There's so much to know.
yeah, Prabhupada would say,
In our own life, right, when we first used to come to temple, we read one purport or something and we thought we understood the whole thing, or we felt like we could explain to others. And slowly when you start reading, how much time it has taken to even say, I understand the Bhagavad Gita. Every time there's something new, something deeper, and we realize, when I ask someone, we do this in the university, you make them chant around, and you ask them, what % of the time do you feel you were focused on the mantra? And in general, their answer will be, about 90% of the time I was focused. You ask a practicing devotee, what % of time were you focused on the Mahamantra? And they will honestly say, I wish it was at least 10% or 3%, mind is running all over the place. Because somehow with truth, things are clearer. With ignorance, you can't tell. In ignorance, we assume many things. And truth is what makes things clear about ourselves and in general. I mean, that's not the point, but you get the idea.
well, Prabhupada was saying about that one man, he says, I can recite the Bhagavad Gita in so many minutes, and Prabhupada says, well, can you follow it for so many minutes?
Jai Jagannath?
As a continuation of the discussion from Uttama Shloka Prabhu and
Yeah.
Dr. Luke, the reason that Kaimutta Nyaya would work as a suitable example if persons accepted spiritual energy and its inconceivableness. So the strongest arguments in philosophy are usually the ones that are never made. So when we describe it to people with the assumption that they already accept spirit and the inconceivable potency of spirit, then such analogies may be able to explain that to them.
Correct.
But the example, the question was, we're meeting someone in the train station, and what do we know about their understanding of spiritual subject matter whatsoever?
Correct.
So when you give analogies like that, then it can create, because actually the analogy of just see how they're doing TV actually brings it within the realm of conceivability. And it makes, in other words, it gives it a mundane flavor to it. So not knowing where the persons are at, if we give such analogies with subtle subject matter, it generates a misconception about the subject matter being discussed. Therefore, when it gets to a higher level of topics, even one word can change the whole understanding of things. And therefore, one is advised to be very careful to see how the acharyas are explaining certain subject matters, what type of analogies they use. But given they accept spirit and the inconceivableness of spirit, then those analogies could help in terms of the Kaimutta Nyaya principle. And also in terms of the principle that the strongest arguments are usually the ones that are never discussed. But again, back to the other point, if we find something in our pramadam that directly contradicts that sort of explanation, like Uttama Shloka used the example of the yogis. So
And
I'm quoting
Sanatana
Sanatana Goswami directly contradicts that example. So we would have to look for another sort of explanation, at least in the community of our devotees. But if we're explaining to someone on the street, they're not kavi bihi, so we may do well to just
Sure, and
take
we
all
make
these
up our
points
own
into
analogies
consideration.
all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the raw audience may not be able to refute across a range of, is that within your Siddhanta? And we'd say, I don't know my Siddhanta. A good way, in terms of practicality is, When we meet people, one of the things that we're very eager is to explain to them. And we should be as eager to first understand who they are. So the right answer, or a right answer would be, I'd like to have a conversation with the person to know where they are at, what their convictions are, if he's a super atheist or a religious person or a seeker. Without even assessing my audience, I may not be able to speak. The first order of business is to assess the audience. Like Srila Prabhupada, he assessed his audience very clearly before he said anything. So part of our preaching, this is a practical part of our preaching and meeting others, is not just the content, which of course is the most important thing. Along with content, the second most important is the delivery, how we say it. And as important with these two is, who are we speaking to? Because the language we use or the analogies, etc., depends on the audience. Prabhupada explained according to audience, right? And so it's important that if you're going to explain something like this, to know who the audience is. What are their sensibilities, their sensitivities? What is it that you can say? You have to assess. And from that Krishna will inspire.
He was conducting a program, and one new girl came to the program. So he started describing about Mahavishnu,
Right.
and how when he breathes out, there are unlimited universes that come from his pores. Then he expands again and enters into the universe, and fills half the universe up with his sweat. Then he lays down on the bed of snakes, and then from his lotus navel comes a lotus flower, and a four-headed creature comes out. He went through the whole explanation. And there were people who were regularly coming, and then there was this new girl. And she reported the Bhakti Yoga Club to the temple god. She said they're a cult and they're brainwashing people with all this nonsense. And so they had the club was, they weren't suspended, but they were like under
Probation.
Yeah, surveillance or something because he was freely speaking about, these things. You remember that? The devotees were telling me about that.
Prabhupada, he quoted this story of a Christian preacher, preaching to the mine workers, coal miners. And the point was how he knew what to say to his audience in such a way that they will understand the message. You know that story of preacher talking to the coal miners? So apparently a Christian preacher went to the coal miners working in the mines to help them or to inspire them to surrender to Jesus. So he went there and he was speaking to them, and they looked totally disinterested. And the typical Christian message is, accept Jesus or you will go to hell. Like heavy message, you'll go to hell, go to hell. So one of them asked, so describe hell for us. He said, hell is that place where it's always dark. They looked around, and he said, it's always damp. They looked around and said, we're already in hell. Why should we go anywhere? We're already there. And so the preacher had to quickly think, what is it that, he said, in hell there are no newspapers. No, we don't want to be there. We want to get out because we want to read the news. So he had to inspire them to get out of that hellish condition. So he said, there are no newspapers there. Like that. What did you say? Because I'll explain later. At breakfast. Really? Really? I thought you were with... Okay. Exactly. I was like, man. First I used to give class on Mondays and people would not laugh. I thought it's just Monday. Now it's middle of the week. I still have to come to the realization that I'm not funny, but that's later. Usually you first look for problems outside. But it's a Wednesday thing somehow. It's a middle of the week phenomenon. Anyway, anything else? You had something? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Krishna, for the Harinam team, we'll just assemble quickly down in the indoctrination room. Mukunda Prabhu is going to lead us through a very short meeting before the Boga gets here. Harinam, everyone in the Harinam team, he sent out an email. Right now.
No, but I mean like, not specifically the Harinam. Everyone. Okay.
Yeah, everyone in the Harinam team. Please come to the indoctrination room.
Give them an analogy.
Yeah, it's like when we have the other meeting.
Can they be simultaneously in the two places? Can they log in?